We see the symptoms everywhere: climate disasters, seized supply chains, kinetic wars, and massive market volatility. Mainstream macroeconomics looks at these trillion-dollar crises and diagnoses them as mechanical failures, glitches in a massive global machine. That diagnosis reveals a dangerous blind spot. Economists suffer from the reification of institutional abstractions. For decades, we have treated the global market, sovereign states, and utility grids as cold, autonomous engines, completely detached from the people operating them. But a utility grid is not an alien force. It is a cohort of living human beings, grid operators and physical stewards, organized around a specific operational mandate. The exact same is true for the engineering teams at Google, or the legal architects negotiating treaties within a government. When we treat these cohorts of living people as detached machinery, we bake systemic failure into the economy. We ensure the friction between them can never be solved. This animated diagram illustrates the problem. Up top, the cyber cohort generates hyper-fast 1D algorithms. Below, the physical cohort manages dense 7D reality. Now add the 4D sovereign helix writing policy, and the foundational 10D social swarm, anchoring the system through physical labor. We force these four distinct groups into a state of systemic schizophrenia. They operate in a zero-sum war across violently asynchronous time horizons, where millisecond AI ambition crashes into 90-day financial ledgers and 5-year physical grid queues. The result is a massive collision. Weightless, scale-free machine logic, authored in sterile development environments, strikes blindly into the heavy regulatory and physical reality of the Earth. We see the immediate fallout in live supply chain seizures and widespread workforce burnout. This is the tetratic bleed. We mistakenly measure this physical and ecological collapse as mere freemiential friction on a ledger. The legacy tech sector tries to solve this friction by extracting massive amounts of data from the real world, pulling it up into centralized servers to train top-down, omnipotent models. That is the meta-training fallacy. If you try to mathematically average the messy, hyper-localized realities of the physical world, you do not gain total control. You generate a useless statistical ghost. Take a look at this photograph of the European Parliament complex. It represents strict, deeply entrenched sovereign laws and policies. The 10-dimensional truth of the world is defined by this kind of hyper-localized friction. You cannot average it out of existence. We see the exact same uncompromising limits in the physical world. This view of the Colorado River Canyon illustrates the rigid thermodynamic and ecological boundaries that anchor the true economy. Algorithms cannot bypass a drought. Raw, localized data must never move up to a centralized machine. To survive, the blank technological capability must move down, straight into the securely firewalled environments where human data actually lives. This brings us to the Prosperity Co-Creation Corporation, or P3C, and its Zyro Hive architecture. Zyro Hive is not a master AI. It has no mind, no policy, and no autonomous authority. It operates strictly as a one-dimensional cybernetic airlock. This abstract model shows how the airlock manages chaos through a 3-phase continuum. In Phase 1, counterparties use zero-knowledge proofs to translate their conflicting legacy contracts, dark data, and ecological limits into a single, unified mathematical vector. In Phase 2, that math enters an active transformation state. Human operators aggressively stress-test the venture against real-world physical boundaries and sovereign constraints inside a tightly managed temporal buffer. Heavy shovels dig the earth, new source code runs, and supply routes shift. Phase 3 is autopoietic collapse. The instant human operators verify that all physical and sovereign constraints are satisfied, the airlock drops. A T0 settlement is triggered, simultaneously clearing the fiat capital, the algorithmic logistics, and the physical capacity. This process bypasses the need to destroy global tech giants. Instead, it re-engineers how their one-dimensional capability safely interacts with the 10-dimensional Earth, completely neutralizing the systemic rupture. In the legacy economy, a T0 settlement marked the absolute end of the transaction, leaving physical assets to slowly drift out of alignment and decay. In the kinetic economy, T0 is the ignition of perpetual sustenance. By utilizing the airlock to cure the asynchronous trauma that drives these 4 cohorts apart, the systemic schizophrenia evaporates. With that historical friction removed, the cohorts stop competing for survival and collapse into two horizontal, symbiotic layers. The first coequal is the 10-dimensional living ecosystem. This layer integrates the social, sovereign, and physical cohorts into one unified organism that holds the biological intent of the community and the thermodynamic capacity of the local grid. The second coequal is the one-dimensional agnostic exoskeleton. Here, global cybergiants are permanently demoted to a horizontal, frictionless routing layer that simply serves the needs of the living ecosystem. This cyclical flow visualization maps the Universal Coherence Asset, or UCA. It acts as the metabolic gas of the new system, continuously tracing the flow of sustenance between the localized ecosystem and the exoskeleton. One-dimensional fiat currency cannot measure physical grid decay or human exhaustion. The UCA cycle provides constant mathematical proof that intellectual property, physical capacity, and social law remain in absolute alignment. This inversion flips the 20th century hierarchy, establishing localized biological truth as the foundational ground truth for the global network. In this model, yield is the capture of kinetic energy that used to be burned in zero-sum friction. By reuniting the fractured human cohorts into a single flow, we replace the bleed of systemic decay with a state of continuous abundance.